Welcome to my audience in 65 countries around the globe. As some of you know, I was one of the first to discuss that I thought Brexit was a real possibility. I was placed on the Thinkers 50 Guru Radar list for the world's top business thinkers. I'm going to explain why the British people decided to leave the European Union. It was an historic decision on June 23, 2016. This day will go down in British history. As an executive coach, one of my skills is understanding the dynamics of people, how they think, especially leadership, but also understanding how the actions of leaders can impact a lot of different types of people. There's a psychological component here, and I want to discuss why Brexit happened, what it means for democracy. I'll touch on a little bit later in the broadcast what it means for Donald Trump. But first, I just want to say that I have friends who voted both ways. Some of my friends voted to leave the EU. Some of my friends voted to stay or remain in the EU. There are a lot of Davos CEOs who are in shock right now, and a lot of bankers and even journalists who didn't see this coming. It was a definitive vote. It was 52% to 48% in any democratic referendum or decision or vote that it's the will of the people, the majority that rules in a democracy, and therefore we have to all embrace this decision. So what I'd like to share is some thoughts. We'll call it 5 reasons Brexit happened. And as I sip my morning coffee on a Saturday morning, I want to share with you and all of my leaders and friends and CEOs out there, especially my Davos CEOs, why Brexit happened. There was a feeling in the economy that the people are not being invested in. There's a concern among a lot of people that the middle class is going away. There's not enough focus on job creation for the middle class. And part of that is we need to invest more in entrepreneurs. You know, I read 25 global publications and I follow a lot of markets around the globe. But for any middle class to thrive, you need to have a lot more investment in entrepreneurs. Now, I've talked in the past about how only 6% of UK companies export to the EU. So there are a lot of companies that feel sort of clamped down by some of the regulations that the EU is imposing. And therefore, they wanted to have more agility. And the reality is that while a lot of the messages that we hear from the big media are from, bankers and CEOs of multinational companies, that actually backfires. And I want to get into this as reason number 2. I think one of the main reasons that people voted for Brexit is when CEOs of major corporations and banks start coming out and saying you should vote this way, it actually sets off kind of an alarm system in people. They're wondering, okay, why are CEOs and bankers telling me to vote this way? There's a big question mark there, especially, we've seen the Edelman Trust Barometer at the World Economic Forum and how people are questioning corporations. So when you're a CEO and you express yourself on politics or religion, you need to do it in an open-minded and objective way, because I guarantee you that there are people in your company, whether they say it or not, who have different opinions than you do, and you don't want to make people feel uncomfortable. You cannot try and impose your religious values or your political values on your entire company. That is not democracy, and I want to make that very clear. There was even an article in Harvard Business Review that I read recently about how people are growing concerned about these activist CEOs who are trying to tell people what to do. I'm so happy to see Harvard Business Review raising this point. I was so happy to see the freedom of speech cover article in The Economist. I believe that article was written by a woman. Women understand some of these nuances, but these are very important points. There would have been a higher likelihood of Remain if the CEOs of the big companies, the bankers, and the politicians from other countries had not expressed their point of view. So that's something I want people to understand as a major learning experience here. If big company CEOs are telling people how to vote one way, chances are they're going to vote the other way. And we saw a lot of that going on. So I want people to be very clear on that one, especially my leaders and my Davos CEOs. All right. The third reason that Brexit happened is that, and I've touched on this before in other videos, but there is a concern that the EU is not set up as a true democracy. In other words, these are not elected officials who are making decisions. The freedom of speech issue, working with social media, all these issues started to scare people. In a true democracy, you are allowed to express your opinions. And the wonderful thing about democracy, and I can tell you this from having grown up in a family where I had grandparents who were Democrats on one side, I had grandparents who were Republican on the other side, and I really embraced that because I was brought up in an environment where expressing your opinion was a good thing, and it was okay if people didn't agree with me. You know, I'm not here to try and get everyone to think like me. No, I actually embrace diversity of thought. That's one of the best things that can happen in any business, corporation, or political democracy. So I don't express my opinions in the hopes that I want everyone to agree with me. I express my opinions because I believe in what I say. And sometimes when people express themselves and you don't agree with them, you learn something new. So I see it as all a positive. But again, you cannot try and shut people down. You know, the media gets into a very gray area, as do, you know, celebrities or anyone when they come out and say, oh, people are haters that disagree with them. I mean, this is such a slippery slope. And, you know, your reputations as celebrities goes down, actually, because you cannot impose your beliefs on other people. Donald Trump did this really well, because when he was asked by Piers Morgan, you can go back to the tape, what he thought about Brexit, he was very careful about how he answered the question. He said, not once but twice, that he did not want to tell other people what to do. But he said that he thought Brexit would be a good thing. But he said, look, it's not going to impact me. I don't want to tell people how to vote. He was very clear about that. And I think people trust him. People trust someone who expresses themselves in that way. Whereas if you're a CEO who's going on LinkedIn and Twitter and telling people how to vote repeatedly, you lose the trust. And it's something that these Davos CEOs need to know, because you need to express yourself in a more objective fashion. And as I said, yes, you have freedom of speech just like everyone else, but because you are in a position of power, there's a nuance of how you need to express yourself, okay? When you express yourself and your opinion, you're not trying to influence everyone else. You're just expressing your opinion. I'd also like to give a really warm welcome to Elizabeth Hurley, who voted for Brexit, as well as Maria Bartiromo, who's done a wonderful job of covering Brexit on Fox Business News. I also would like to give a warm welcome to Greta and to Laura Southern in Canada. They've all done a great job of covering Brexit, and I'd like to give everyone, these women journalists are doing such a great job. And the fourth reason that this happened is the rise of Donald Trump, actually. Because Donald Trump is becoming so popular in the United States and is a contender to win the U.S. presidential election, I think it shows other democracies. This is really democracy in action. And Donald Trump does it in a way that is something that everyone at every level can understand. He speaks on a level that everyone can understand, and that is an important point. And he expresses it with feeling, and that is attractive to a lot of people. You know, he doesn't always agree with the party line. Sometimes he'll cross the party line, sometimes he won't. Democracy in action is something that is wonderful and positive. And the fifth reason that the Brexit happened is that it was the right thing to do. It was integrity in action. The way things were going were not working for a lot of people. On immigration, on the economy, a lot of decisions that were being made, freedom of speech, things were just not going in the right direction. And I think that the British people were very smart to stand up and say, you know, our ancestors fought so hard for democracy. Our women fought so hard for the right to vote and for freedom of speech and to dress how they want and to have, you know, whatever photo they want to have. And no one should be able to change that for women. It is important that we all believe that the British people have done the right thing today. And I would say to the young people of London who are upset, and the bankers, the young people, millennials who work for some of these big companies, you may have it good now, but let me just tell you this. They will replace you at 40 and 50 unless you get on an executive row, and then what? Listen to the older people. Listen to the women with a lot of wisdom, with older experience than you. Listen to the men who are trying to make a go of it at 60, who may live to be 100, who need to have a livelihood. Sometimes it takes a lot of years of experience and a lot of wisdom to understand democracy. But I think that we are all seeing democracy in action, and I want to congratulate all of the British people for this historic and wonderful decision. One thing that you'll notice in the coming days, there's going to be a lot of coverage on the stock market. Now, it's going to actually take about 2 years for Brexit to be completed with all the negotiations that will need to go on between the British government and the European Union. So this is just the market being a rubber band. It goes up and down. We'll have to see over the long term what Brexit means for the stock market. You can't decide that, in 1 week. So I want people to understand that also in the media, you are going to see some people trying to scare you from Wall Street, the bankers and so forth. Don't be too alarmed. This has to sort itself out. As Donald Trump said the other day at his Turnberry press conference, we'll know in 5 years what Brexit meant. I think that there needs to be this transition period where we all talk calmly about Brexit. The political will of the people has expressed itself. The reality is this was an historic decision. It will take time to sort out. It could be a benefit to the economy, especially seeing more ability for entrepreneurs to be successful over a period of time. But over time, we will see what the actual economic benefits are of the Brexit. And I believe that we need to take that into account, because yes, they're scared, and we need to help them along as we all realize that this is an historic decision. We need to understand that the will of the people is the most important thing in a democracy. And I would be happy to be retained as your executive coach. I coach executives, CEO teams, as well as CEOs on communication, leadership, career, and how to do the right thing. As Winston Churchill said, if Britain must choose between Europe and the open sea, she must always choose the open sea. And I congratulate the British people today. Well done. I'm Sandra Rupp. I was placed on the Thinkers 50 Guru Radar list for the world's top business thinkers. Many thanks to my viewers in 65 countries around the globe. You can follow me at Exec Career Coach on Twitter and at Career Expert on YouTube. Join me on Google+. And thanks for watching.